Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Name One Player podcast. My name is Nicole. I am your host. And before we get into the episode, I just want to say a huge thank you to every single person who is listening today. If you are a returning listener, welcome back. Whatever episode that you listened to in the past, maybe it was one episode, maybe it was all the episodes, I don't know. But I'm so glad that you listened to whatever episode that you listened to and you thought, hey, this show's really cool. I'm going to come back. That means the absolute world to me. Thank you for coming back. It makes me so happy. On the flip side of that, if this is your first time ever hearing my voice, ever hearing my introduction to the Name One Player podcast, welcome. Huge welcome to you. I am so glad that you are here. I don't know how you found the Name One Player podcast, but I am so happy that you did, and I am so happy that you are here. We have a great episode in store for you today. The Name One Player podcast is a place for women to talk about the sports that they love without ever being asked to name one player. I will never, ever, ever do that. That's lame. However, I will probably ask you to name a time that you've been asked to name one player, because those are kind of funny to look back on. But being asked to name one player is less funny. Anybody listening, please don't do that because it's annoying. Just let people love sports without quizzing them, okay? We don't need to be doing that anymore. It's 2025. We don't need to be doing that anymore. Another thing about the year 2025, and it's shocking to me that we are in 2025 and this is happening, is that people are getting mad about male cheerleaders in the National Football League. Okay, like I just said, this is a place for women to talk about the sports teams that they love. We are doing a solo episode today, and we are talking about the number one sports team that I love, and that's the Minnesota Vikings. And we are also talking about a sport that I've loved for really like 2/3 of my life, if we're putting numbers on it, and that is cheerleading. Actually, even more than that, because I started cheerleading at the age of 10, but I loved it before that. When my brother was playing football, I remember going to his games, practices. I remember hating going to his games and practices. I had to be bribed every time to go. I was a little kid and I wasn't playing, so it was not engaging to me. However, once I saw those cheerleaders, I was hooked. I loved cheerleading from that moment on, so I don't know how old I was, maybe 5, 6. I was a young kid, and cheerleading, I started competitive cheerleading when I was around 10 years old. Did that all the way till I made it up to the world level, representing Canada at the cheerleading worlds, and then did it all throughout high school and in college. And cheerleading was just always a major part of my life, and I loved it. But when cheerleading is a big part of your life, you get used to two things. You get used to people, men in particular, telling you that cheerleading is not a sport, telling you that it's easy, telling you that you're just standing on the sidelines and looking pretty, you don't add any value to anything, and that is not a real sport, really, essentially. I remember in middle school, little tangent, middle school in where I'm from is grades 6, 7, and 8. So you're like, I don't know, 11 to 13, 14, those kind of ages. So like the formative teenage years, okay? And at this time, again, I'm cheerleading for a world's level team. Something about cheerleading too, again, little tangent here. There's different types of cheerleading, okay? There's cheerleading for a school squad, which kind of is that typical, pom-poms on the sideline cheering on the team, but also getting the crowd involved. That's, I think, the main focus. Like, of course, yeah, there's that stereotype that you're there for the team, but I don't know about you, but I've definitely been to a lot of sports games where the crowd is just boring and dull. And that is such a main part of the cheerleader's job, is to pump up that crowd, which then in turn pumps up the team because of the cheerleaders, okay? The cheerleaders are a major part of that, but little side tangent there. So in middle school, I was on the cheerleading team for my middle school, but was also doing all-star cheerleading. And all-star cheerleading is competitive cheer. It's usually in your city, your area. Each city kind of has its own cheerleading gym. It is multiple hours a week. It is a time investment. It is a monetary investment. It is not cheap to do all-star cheerleading. You are often traveling for competitions. You're competing. Usually a team has a choreographer. They choreograph a routine for cheer team, and you just practice that routine for the entire year and you perfect it, and they're usually around 2 minutes and 30 seconds. You go out and you compete in front of judges and you compete against other teams, and the best team wins, really, is what it is. And it's hard work, okay? It's composed of stunts, which is putting people up in the air, composed of tumbling, which is all the really crazy flips and acrobatics and all that stuff. There's like a dance component, there's jumps. It's hard work. Like any cheerleader can tell you, the 2 minutes and 30 seconds where you're running full out. So everything, like as if you're competing, it's 100%, you're not holding back at all, is like the hardest 2 minutes and 30 seconds that you'll ever do. The cardio that is required for a full out cheerleading routine is next level, like truly next level. I'm thinking about any sport that requires that level of athleticism for 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and I genuinely can't think of anything. Like maybe sprinting, but and I don't know much about track and field, so maybe there is a sprint event that you are running for that long. I don't really know. But even then, sprinting, you're just running. Like, of course, there's so many parts to sprinting and things that are engaged in your body and your mind and all that good stuff. But like in cheerleading, again, you are running across the floor, but you have to look good while you're doing it. You're doing backflips across the floor. You're either holding people or you're in the air. You're jumping, you're dancing, you're smiling. That's the whole thing. You have to look good while you're doing it too. You can't look like you're dying. That's part of the whole practicing, is that you have a big smile on your face, your hair is done up, your makeup's done. Like it's a whole process, and I genuinely truly do not think that there's anything that compares to it. But anyways, that's a tangent within this tangent. The whole point of me saying that is that in middle school, every single year, each student had to do a speech. And then you would perform that speech in front of your class, and then the best speeches would then perform in front of your grade, and then that would go on to in front of the entire school. And I remember I did a speech on cheerleading and whether or not cheerleading was a sport, because like I said, if you are involved in cheerleading, you are used to people telling you straight to your face that cheerleading is easy and it's not a sport. And again, this was a very long time ago, and thankfully, cheerleading is recognized by the International Olympic Committee as a sport. And that definitely helps. I was not able to include that part in my speech. I remember at the time too, it was like talks of it. And that was always the easiest thing for people to say. Well, it's not in the Olympics. But guess what? Football's not in the Olympics. Is football not a sport? I don't know. Is it not? That, like, if that's what we're basing our what is a sport and what isn't, football, I guess, isn't a sport. Baseball, not a sport. What other sports aren't in the Olympics? I don't know. There's so many. Now the International Olympic Committee cheerleading does have sport status, which definitely makes it easier to debunk that side of things. That is like a super long tangent, not even really getting into the episode. However, like I mentioned, people are angry that the Minnesota Vikings have some cheerleaders on their team. Back to my first two things. The second part of my two things, that when you are a cheerleader, when you're involved in cheerleading, especially from a young age, you are just used to males cheerleading. When you do cheerleading, you know that it is a co-ed sport. I've been on countless co-ed teams. There are teams that are all girl and they compete as all girl. A lot of schools will have an all girl team and a co-ed team. I've been around male cheerleaders my whole life, and I've been around the stereotypes of male cheerleaders. I've met a million gay male cheerleaders. I've met a million straight male cheerleaders. I grew up obsessed with the Bring It On movies. There are straight male cheerleaders in those movies. There are gay male cheerleaders in those movies. You're around male cheerleaders and it becomes the norm. Yes, of course, cheerleading currently is a female dominated sport. There's no denying that. But at the same time, there are so many men who cheerlead. It's not a new thing. And we will get into the history of cheerleading, but something that always makes me laugh is that cheerleading originated as a men's sport. Like, men created cheerleading and men were the only people on cheerleading teams. There were no women on cheerleading teams, and we will get into that further. But cheerleading is definitely looked at as a very female heavy sport. And you do get used to men having weird feelings around seeing men cheerlead, and they get upset about it. And I haven't been on a cheerleading team in a long time, since I graduated university. And again, because I got used to it, and maybe I was able to kind of tune those voices out. But on collegiate cheer teams in particular, on teams cheering on colleges, there's so many men on those teams. But the reason for this podcast episode today, it's kind of funny how this came to be. So again, I'm a huge Minnesota Vikings fan. I absolutely love them. They are my love, my world. And like I've said, I've loved cheerleading forever. And I follow the Minnesota Vikings cheer team on Instagram. Pretty well every team in the NFL, their team has an Instagram. And I follow them. I think it came up on the Name One Player Instagram account. They posted a video of their team, because I guess the teams were just finalized fairly recently. And they posted it was kind of like a V-shaped formation. And they were like zooming, I don't even know, it was kind of like zooming, and it was like female, female, female. And then the point dancer, they were all like dancing or waving their palms, I'm not exactly sure. And then the point dancer, the person on the point of this like formation right here, was a man, and he looked amazing. Like, he looked so good. And I saw it and I thought, wow, that's really cool. Again, I'm used to seeing men cheerlead, but I hadn't seen any male cheerleaders in the NFL. And we will get again into the history of cheerleading in the NFL and men cheerleading in the NFL. It's actually not the first time at all. It's been happening for many, many years, but I've just never seen it. And I've never seen a sports team showcase it, like put it front and center. Like, this post was showcasing the fact that there is a man on this team. And I saw it, liked it, thought, wow, that's really awesome. I also don't really make a habit of, when I see a post, like going to the comments. Like, I move on with my day. That's a big thing here. I see something on social media, and if I like it, I might engage with it, tap it. If I don't like it, I move on. But even if I do like it, a lot of the time, I got a lot of things going on in my life, okay? I'm not giving a lot of extra of my time and energy into reading other people's thoughts, usually, okay? Majority of the time. So I like this Instagram post. I do not look at the comments. Genuinely didn't even cross my mind to look at the comments. It didn't cross my mind that this would be a controversial thing in that moment. Truly, it didn't. I saw this post and I thought, wow, that's really cool. I love that the Minnesota Vikings are doing this. It is different to see a man in the NFL on a cheerleading team. And then I went about my day. I went about my day, and maybe 3 days later, something like that, one of my friends, Emily, shout out Emily, she texted me and she said, what do you think about all the backlash about the Minnesota Vikings having 2 men on their cheerleading team? And I said, what are you talking about? I saw that they posted that they have a guy on it, and like, he looked fabulous. He looked amazing. He looked He looked so great, and that was all that I had seen of it, really. I hadn't seen any backlash. Again, I don't necessarily go seeking out drama online. It really did make me realize, like, I guess I've curated all the information that I consume online to be a bit more positive, thankfully. But I wasn't seeing any of the backlash. So she tells me about it and she's like, no, like a lot of people are saying that they're canceling their season tickets and that they're boycotting the NFL. And a lot of people are really angry about this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hadn't even seen this at all. I hadn't even heard that people were angry. I often get a lot of push notifications for the Minnesota Vikings, like on Twitter and Google, but nothing had come through for that for me. So I was like, oh my God. And then I go back to Instagram. I go back to that post, and yeah, people were not happy about it. There were so many people commenting like, wow, this is disgusting. This isn't what I want to see. Men shouldn't be cheerleading. Get these people off of my field. This is disgraceful to women. I'm canceling my season tickets. I'm no longer a Minnesota Vikings fan. I've been a fan for my whole life, but I'm done now. Gosh, I could say one thing to each of those comments right now. And thankfully though, you know what? I did also see so many comments of people being like, you're an idiot. Give me your season tickets then. Bye. I've been on a wait list for a very long time. I want those tickets. You're not a real fan if this is what you're saying. But people were angry. People were really mad. And then, not even Minnesota Vikings fans, I realized, were mad. And then I realized Donald Trump commented on it, and then just all of these Republican, and let me preface this too. I usually do not talk about politics on the Name One Player podcast. I'm Canadian. I usually don't even touch on American politics, but in particular, a lot of Republican politicians commenting on it. There was one ex-Vikings player who personally I had never heard of. This was before my time of being a fan, but I do know a lot of players who were playing before I was watching, and he's not ringing any bells. I don't know. Maybe he's a major player, maybe he's not. I don't know. But he was saying, you know what? This is disgusting. This is horrible. This is disgraceful. The Minnesota Vikings organization is horrible for doing this. And it's crazy. It's crazy. The amount of people who are just saying that men shouldn't be in cheerleading, and it's wild. So I wanted to do a podcast episode kind of discussing this and touching a little bit about the history of cheerleading and touching on why I think men in particular, and I will say also too, I have seen some women who are upset about this. So we'll say people who are upset about this and maybe why they're upset about it, and kind of breaking that down a little bit. And then also touching on some of the positives that are coming from this. And yeah. I have a lot to say. This might be pretty disorganized. Obviously, too, this is a solo episode. Usually when I have my guests, I have a bit of more of a structure. We don't really have that today. This is kind of just going to be me throwing my thoughts out at you. So I apologize if we're all over the place, but I have a lot to say on this. There is a lot of conflicting information online as well, and I will note, I've done my research. However, if anything is incorrect and anybody finds anything different or just knows of anything different, please let me know. This is not going to be an APA cited, leaving my references at the end of this video. If you have any questions about where I found any of my information, please do let me know. I can let you know. Most of it was a little Google search and maybe the first 3 pages that came up. So take that as you will. A lot of this information too is just my personal experience of loving cheerleading for 2 decades of my life. So I do feel like I'm qualified to speak on the topic. So let's just get into it. Let's get into a little bit of the history here. I do have some things written down. The biggest thing, and something that I just think is so funny and relevant to this point of this, and what I touched on before, cheerleading started as being only men. And they were yell squads for football teams in particular. And the athleticism that these men had, the yell squad kind of rivaled the quarterback's athleticism on the football team. Like it was considered so important to the football team's atmosphere was having this yell squad. And they were so respected. So yell squads at that time, this was like mid 1800s, was considered such an important part of sports. Now, it wasn't really called cheerleading, leading cheers to get people involved and supporting the team, until, I don't have the exact year written down, but it was the late 1800s. I think it was like 1897 or something. But I do have the name, and his name is Johnny Campbell, and I do have the school. He attended the University of Minnesota. And I do think that it is really quite ironic that the University of Minnesota has the first documented cheerleader and cheer team. Again, they were called Yell Squads before. And now the Minnesota Vikings in 2025 are pissing people off because they have 2 men on their cheerleading team. I just think that's funny. I think that's quite funny. So yeah, he was the first documented cheerleader. And guess what? He was a man. He was a man. And cheerleading continued on. I'm not big into American politics, but there were multiple American presidents throughout American history who were cheerleaders for their universities. And cheerleading, again, was only for men. It started out by men, it was for men, and women could not be on these teams. Women did not start cheerleading until men went off to war. That's the only reason women started getting involved in cheer. The men were gone. They weren't cheerleading anymore, so the women had to step up, and step up they did. And the men came back from war. The world wars were over, and women didn't go away. That's when cheerleading really started to become a female-dominated sport. And the 60s hit, that's when you're getting that pom-pom, that preppy, all-American kind of feel for cheerleading. And I think when we talk about being in 2025, I think a lot of people's brains are still stuck in the 1960s. And just that idea of that's what cheerleading is. And people have been stuck in that time frame for a very long time. Now that we know a little bit of the backstory of cheerleading and the fact that it was a place for well-respected athletic men, cheerleaders, okay? That's what they were. We can get into a little bit of the history of cheerleading in the National Football League. Okay. So we're, again, going back to the 60s here. The very first attempt at ingraining men into cheerleading in the NFL were with the Pittsburgh Steelers, okay? They weren't incorporating men how the Minnesota Vikings and other football teams are, of like actually literally having them on their cheer squads. But the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1962 had a male cheer squad. They were a team of men who fired cannons whenever the Steelers scored, but it only lasted 1 season. But they were trying to get the men involved, but even with that, the men were doing these manly things of firing cannons. But they were still there. They were there to get the crowd hyped up. They were there to bring the energy, which really is the point of any cheerleading team. They were there. Then in 1978, we have Glenn Welch. He is documented as the first male to try out for an NFL cheerleading team, and that was for the Miami Dolphins, and he did not make it. So Glenn Welch, if you are around today, I wonder what he is thinking about all of this stuff. Glenn, I don't know how old you are. Maybe try out now, Glenn, okay? We are a more inclusive, well, I was gonna say, it's a more inclusive world out there now, Glenn, but apparently it isn't. Apparently it really isn't at all. Anyways, okay, so we're leading into the more modern times. This is 1998. Okay, the Baltimore Ravens have male stuntmen, but they're not dancing. That is another thing. Another little tangent here that I'm going to write down to talk about further. The NFL cheerleaders, I would say, are more of a dance squad than a cheerleading squad. In the sense of, if we're looking at traditional cheerleading, that includes stunts, like throwing people up into the air, tumbling, pyramids, all of that kind of stuff. You're not seeing that on NFL teams. And correct me if I'm wrong, maybe there are some teams doing that, but I would say they're more dance teams, but again, still kind of paying homage to the classic cheerleader image, which a lot of them still have, but in the NFL. Their cheerleading teams are doing more dancing in the NFL than any of the other aspects of cheerleading, just to point that out. In 1998, the Baltimore Ravens started incorporating, we have quoted here, male stuntmen. They were not dancers. So I'm not exactly sure what they were doing, if they were doing those backflips, if they were maybe doing the stunts and holding the women in the air, that kind of classic cheerleading piece. But they were not dancing. They were not like the Minnesota Vikings having the center point dancers as men. They weren't doing that. 2009, we have the Dallas Cowboys. They launched their rhythm and blue dancers, and that was a co-ed dance team. So obviously the Dallas Cowboys are they are icons when it comes to their cheerleading team, the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. So if the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders decided to make another dance team, including men, like, why are we mad about it? If they did it, like, why are we angry? I do understand, obviously, again, it was different. The men out there weren't doing Thunderstruck in their cowboy boots. And maybe if they had done that in 2009, I'm sure people would have been angry about it. But they were including men. They were including men in their spirit squads. That's what I know a lot of teams used to be referred to as. And getting people hyped up. The men were included on this co-ed dance team. Now, this is kind of where it gets a little bit fuzzy with the dates. In my research, I have that the LA Rams in 2018 had male dancers on their cheerleading team. But we do also have the Saints in 2018 have a man on their cheerleading team as well. So back in 2018, there were men on cheerleading squads. And I, again, was doing some research. I couldn't necessarily find a lot of backlash surrounding that at that time. I don't know if these teams maybe introduced them a little bit more quietly and a bit more hush-hush and just weren't very open about it. I don't really know. But these men have been dancing on NFL football teams since 2018. The narrative right now is that the Minnesota Vikings are the first team to have men on their cheerleading team. They're not. They're absolutely not. It is either the Rams or the Saints, or if we look back, the Steelers or the Dallas Cowboys. This isn't new, okay? This isn't new. What I do think is new is the team showcasing it. The team putting out an Instagram post and putting this man front and center. Again, doing my research, I did not go through every single team's roster of their cheerleaders. I did not count how many men are on these teams. But from the research that I've done, there are 12 teams out of the 32 teams in the NFL that have male cheerleaders for the 2025 season. In 2024, there were 7 teams out of the 32 teams that had male cheerleaders on their cheerleading squads. And the thing is, too, the Minnesota Vikings have 2 male cheerleaders and posted a video of one of them, okay? The Baltimore Ravens have 19 male cheerleaders on their squads, and I truly have not seen anybody freaking out about it. I haven't. Maybe I'm just missing it. And again, I didn't even really see anybody freaking out about the Minnesota Vikings men. And the Saints also, too, have 11 male cheerleaders. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's, again, because the Minnesota Vikings posted this and this male is just killing it. It was Louis was the one that they posted of the video that I'd seen. And he is just rocking it. Okay, he looks good. And I don't know if that's what pissed people off. Seeing a male dancer just look awesome. I don't know. I don't know if that's what made people angry, but this isn't new. Like, none of this is a new thing here. And it's, again, too, kind of when we're going back to the collegiate sports and what I touched on before, a lot of NFL teams, the cheerleading teams, aren't putting people up in the air. And that is when men really do come in so handy on cheerleading squads. The stunts that you can do with women, yes, of course. I've been on co-ed teams, I've been on all-girl teams, and you can definitely do the stunts with just women. You don't need men to do them. However, I mean, obviously this is a very pro-woman podcast here, but men in cheerleading, when you put a man and a woman beside each other, sometimes the man is going to be stronger, okay? When we're looking at cheerleading and the athleticism behind these men, sometimes you can do different stunts with them when a man is involved than when you only have a woman involved. Nobody get mad at me. Again, I've been on all girl teams. I've done 2-person stunts, with just 2 women. I've done it. Okay, don't come for me. What I'm just saying is typically men, anatomically, they have different strength. Okay, so that's just what I'm saying here. But I think with the NFL teams, because they were more focused on dancing than they are doing these really crazy stunts, people are more used to seeing that on collegiate cheer teams than they are in the NFL. And it's so interesting to me to see now that people are they're cheerleading experts now, they're cheerleading enthusiasts, and they're just all for women's rights. All of these men in these comments, I really do love the energy of, protecting, I guess, the careers of women. I don't know where this switch up came from, because I ain't ever seen these men trying to protect the careers of women before until it affected their perception of cheerleading. Now they're all for making sure that women have all the career opportunities in the world. Now they're really concerned about it. So, yeah, I have a list here of why I think some men are upset about it. First one, fragile masculinity. Like I said, even though cheerleading started as a male thing, cheerleading now definitely has the perception as being a feminine thing. And football definitely has this perception of being a very masculine thing. And I see so many comments of, well, this shouldn't be involved in cheerleading. Men shouldn't be involved in cheerleading. Male cheerleaders shouldn't be involved in football. And I think that really comes from this idea of masculinity needing to be violence. Football's a very violent sport. Where I'm not going to pretend that it's a lot of these men, and I think a lot of these men are the type of men who are asking women to name one player on these football teams. That's neither here nor there, but that's a whole different conversation. But a lot of these men, I think, are looking at this as the only involvement that women should have in sports are just being on the sidelines and looking pretty and just cheering for the men. And the men are supposed to be there, fighting it out and scoring these points and hitting each other, and they shouldn't be there dancing. That's the woman's role. Okay, the men are not supposed to be there. The men are supposed to be there to watch the men fighting, but then also watching the women cheerlead. And I think that's another major piece, is that cheerleading has been sexualized for so freaking long. Men truly think that the cheerleaders are there for 2 reasons. 1, to cheer on the sports team that they're cheering on. But 2, and I think more importantly in their minds, not in mine, please let me make that so clear, that they're there to look hot for the men. They're there to do a little halftime show and look pretty. They're there to wear little outfits, and they're there to literally just look hot. They're there for the male gaze. And I don't think that's what they are there for, but I do think, again, we look at the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. If you've watched the Netflix documentary, and even before, I think it was called Making the Team, there is such an emphasis on looks for cheerleaders in the NFL. Cheerleaders everywhere. I grew up, the makeup and the hair, that's a very large piece of it for sure. And I don't think when you're in it that you're doing it to sexualize yourself. That's not what it is. That's just a part of it. However, if you're not a part of it and you're just there looking, you're gonna think that they're there to look good for you. And that's not it. They're not there to look good for Joe Schmo up in the stands, drunk and yelling at his football team. That's not what they're there to look good for. They're there to look good for themselves. They're there to look good for the organization. They're not there for you to gaze at and to sexualize. That's not what it is. And I talked about this in a few episodes ago with Maddie. I can have the understanding that that's how their brain is computing it. I can understand that. I don't agree with it. I think that's incorrect, but I can understand why they might think that. And I think having these male cheerleaders destroys that image for them. They want to see these hot women dancing around, shaking their ass on their field. They don't want to see men doing it. And that's where it comes in the piece of, they're not there for you. Yeah, of course they're performing for the audience, yes, but they're performing for the audience because they love it, because they've grown up performing. It's something that they truly love to do. They love the team. It's an honor to perform for that team and support that team, and to do something that's entertaining for the fans in a way that's just entertainment, not sexual. Like, it's really not a sexual thing. And why can't men be involved in that? Why can't men who have been dancing their entire life, who have been cheerleading their entire life, why does that, like, now at the NFL level, they can't do that? Now it needs to be a sexual thing. And again, cheerleading has always been sexualized. I do understand that. But adding men to these cheer teams and having them perform on the sidelines and at these halftime shows removes this fantasy that these cheerleaders are there for their eyes only, okay? And it really is a fantasy, because that's not why the cheerleaders are there. That's not why they're there. Let me tell you that, okay? I can't be more clear about that. That's not why they're there. They're not there to look hot for you, okay? But a lot of men believe that. And having these men on these teams takes away from that, takes away from their idea of the women being there to look pretty and for it to be a sexual thing for them. And they're mad about it. And it's quite humorous to me to see them saying these things, and they're saying that. Like, they're not coming blatantly out and saying, I like cheerleaders because to me, I'm thinking of them in a sexual way. And now when there's a man there, I can't do that because I'm not gay. I'm there to watch the women. And now that there's a man there, I can't watch the women. It's not sexy anymore for the women to be there. But they're not like saying that verbatim. But that's exactly what they're saying. It's been humorous to me to look through those comments and to see that, and like to just kind of know that there is that sexual undertone to it, but no man is really coming right out and saying that. So I've been loving the comments of other men and women calling people out and saying that and being like, just come right out and say it, dude. If you think that cheerleaders are there just for your gaze, like, just come right out and say it. You're wrong. And we'll tell you that you're wrong, but just come right out and say it. Another comment that I saw a lot of, which made me giggle a little bit, was a lot of people using the word tradition and the fact that this is not traditional of football and the National Football League, because traditional football is men playing football and women being cheerleaders and being there to cheer on the football players who are men. And the men are supposed to be playing or watching, I guess. But you're not supposed to be cheering. The men shouldn't be there. That's for the women. And it makes me laugh, because if we're talking about tradition, and if tradition is what is so important to you, keeping what we've always done. Actually, I'm going to look up the actual definition of tradition. One moment here. The transmission of customs or beliefs from generation to generation. That's what tradition is, okay? If we're talking about tradition, why aren't we going back to the 1800s when cheerleading teams were only men? If we want traditional cheerleaders cheering on the football players, we have to say goodbye to the women. It seems like if we're so focused on tradition, I'm just going off of what the comments are saying. Tradition, okay? You're telling me that it's not traditional to have male cheerleaders cheering on the football players? That's actually literally exactly what the tradition is. If anything, their idea of these ladies in skirts jumping around the field, that's not tradition. I'm going to call it out for what I think they're actually saying. They don't mean tradition in the sense of let's keep it how it originally was. Let's not change it up. Because if they meant that, then they would mean the original male cheerleaders, because women weren't allowed to cheer. That's tradition, okay? What I think they mean is they don't want to see a difference from their traditional gender roles. And a lot of the comments are taking out those last two words. They're just talking about tradition. This is football. this is the NFL. Let's not mess with tradition. No, you just don't want to mess with your idea of this is what a man should do and this is what a woman should do. A man should be playing football, even though most of the men aren't even playing the football. They're the ones who are watching the football. It's apparently okay for you to watch the football from home or from the stands, but it's not okay to watch the football from the sidelines, be closer to the players than any of these men who are spectators are going to be. That's not okay. They need to be either playing or watching. They cannot be dancing. No, no, no. That's not okay. It's just funny to me, the fact that we're hiding behind this lens of what tradition is. And if we're talking about the definition of tradition being passed down from generation to generation, this is a new generation, okay? It is 2025. It's almost 2026. The tradition that's been passed along to me and the traditions that I'm watching unfold on television and the traditions that I will be passing down to the people who come after me is that anybody who wants to do something that they love doing, they can do it, regardless of their gender. If they want to talk about a sport that they love, they can do it. They don't need to listen to the people who have different traditions and keep them from doing what they want to do. Like it's genuinely not harming anybody that these men are on these cheerleading teams. So, little tangent here, and I did touch on this a little bit at the beginning. That is another comment that I saw, is that these men are taking away spots from women who wanted to be on the team. And the Minnesota Vikings put out a fantastic statement. There's an audition process, there's an interview process for every single person. They made the decision to put these men on the team because they were the best. And I just saw so many people saying like, wow, this is just a liberal attempt at inclusion. First of all, okay. What is so bad about that? Second of all, since when are these men now so upset that women aren't getting fair opportunities at things? Like, it blows my mind. This has been happening forever. And they now are just using this shield of, well, it's tradition. No, it's your gender norms. You're not speaking up for equality, because if you were, you'd be totally okay with whoever's is the best being on the team regardless of their gender. Like, just saying this out loud, like, that literally sounds so backwards. Like, you're trying to say, oh my gosh, women should have all the career opportunities that they deserve, but only in the roles that are conforming in your mind. Only in the spots that are for women in their mind. It's wild to me. Just wild to me. And I'm a very like open and understanding person. I genuinely can see how that train of thought, how that works. But it's sad. Like, it's sad to see. And, I guess this is a good time to bring up the positives that I've seen. The positive comments that I'm seeing really are outweighing the negative comments. Unfortunately, the negative comments just seem to be louder. I always think of the sentence loud and wrong. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from the people who are genuinely upset about this. They are just a lot louder about it. And in my opinion, they're wrong. But we don't need to get into whose opinion is right, whose opinion is wrong, whatever. Opinions are opinions, sure. However, what is not okay is if your opinion hurts people and if your words expressing your opinion hurt people and are derogatory words. Like, that's just genuinely not okay. These men who are cheerleading in the NFL, they didn't just show up for fun. Like, they didn't just walk up to these stadiums, and they obviously auditioned. They obviously worked hard for this. They've obviously had a lifetime of experience. And to just try to take that away and to be nasty about it and to be rude about it just isn't okay to me. However, going back to the positivity, the comments that I have seen, and I have so many friends who love the Minnesota Vikings. I've made such an amazing network of people, and thankfully, the people that I know personally who have spoken out about this have basically called all the people who are angry about this, for lack of a better word, idiots. Like, Let's just go with that because I genuinely can't think of a better word for it right now. I guess stupid is another word too. So I'm glad that is the circle that I'm surrounding myself with. Thankfully none of the negativity has come up across my page. It's more been people reporting on the negativity, which makes me happy to see because makes me know that the information that I'm consuming online is in line with my morals and values. The other positives that I've seen is Blaze and Louie, who are the two male cheerleaders on the Minnesota Vikings cheerleading team. They are handling it so well, and I actually reached out to both of them, and if either of you are listening, I would love to have you guys on the Name One Player podcast. That could be interesting, the first male Name One Player guest. But we'll see. We'll see if it gets there. I don't know. They need to respond to my DM. So, Blazer Louie, if you're listening to this, they've just been handling it so well, and I genuinely can't imagine what it is like to be in this position of receiving all of this backlash and just remaining so professional and so poised in those moments. I think is such a huge accomplishment. Part of me is like, it's not freaking fair. Like, why should they remain that way? But the fact that they're able to and they have the skills to do that, and they're being met with so much hate, but then also so much love and support, I'm really happy that they're able to tap into that positive side of things. The other thing as well, just the Minnesota Vikings organization, I think that's such a positive thing. Seeing the backlash that this has received and the support that they had for the cheerleaders, for the entire team in the statement that they released. And personally, I expected nothing less from them. But, just emphasizing that they're proud of every single cheerleader on that team and emphasizing that male cheerleaders have been around for a very long time on the Vikings cheerleading team as well and other NFL teams. And the fact that this isn't new and just doubling down on the fact that anybody who's on that team is qualified to be on that team and has earned a spot on that team, I think is great. And I think is really important. And hopefully maybe change some of these closed-minded minds, if they see that and then they see that their favorite team is in support of it, is using these words. I was gonna say, I don't know if they can read. That's not nice. That's not nice. I don't know if I'll cut that out or not. We'll see if I like it when I go to edit it. But if they read that and they see that the team is in support of it, maybe that's gonna expand their worldview on gender norms and what their tradition is. If they're so focused on tradition, the Minnesota Vikings have a new tradition. The NFL does have a new tradition of having men on their teams. As of 2018, I personally think it's exciting to see, and I do hope that it can just open people's eyes a little bit, open people's minds a little bit. If it can't, hopefully the people who do have that more accepting view of the world, hopefully our voices can be louder than the other ones and, just keep the NFL a safe place for everybody, for male cheerleaders, for women, for men who have loved the sport forever, for the players, for the staff, for everybody. Like, it doesn't need to be a place where people don't feel good. Like, it doesn't have to be. No sports have to be like that. Sports can be inclusive. They 100% can be, and it is just so nice to see the loud voices that are in support of it, that do kind of not necessarily drown out the loud voices that aren't in support of it. I don't think they're quite drowned out yet. I don't think that we're there, but I hope that anybody who does feel like they aren't being included right now, that they can see that there is a space for them. Yeah. I think that's really it. All that I have. Football's starting in a few weeks. I'm so freaking excited. I am very curious to see what the television coverage is going to be. That's going to be super fascinating to see. Cause they do show the cheerleaders on the broadcast. It's not like the biggest part of it. Like, the biggest part is football. Some people might argue that they show Taylor Swift a lot, but again, it literally is only for 2 seconds. So I'm curious if they will show more of the male cheerleaders on the 14 teams out of the 32. Was it 14 or was it 12? I can't remember the exact number, but that's really going to make people mad. Oh my God, could you imagine? The Chiefs do have male cheerleaders. So imagine a day. It's a Chiefs game. You see Taylor Swift on the screen and you see a male cheerleader. People are not going to be okay. I'm going to be loving it, but there's going to be some people, well, maybe they'll give up their season tickets, and somebody who is an accepting, open human being will get them instead. That'll be a win, at least. I think that's it for me. I think I've rambled on enough. I apologize if this was not the most organized and concise episodes of mine. But it is what it is. I think I got my points across. I would love to hear what all of your thoughts are about the male cheerleaders in the National Football League and the responses to it. You can let me know if you're listening on Spotify. You can comment on the episode. If you're on YouTube, comment. Instagram, TikTok, leave me a comment. The other thing that I would love for you to do is to like the Name on Player podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Rate it. A 5 stars would be best, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. Rate it whatever you think is appropriate, but I think 5 stars personally. Be sure that you're following and subscribing on all of the major platforms, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all that good stuff. It means the world to me, and I really, truly appreciate the engagement. So thank you so much. All right, everybody. I hope you have a lovely rest of your week. Take care, everyone. Bye.